Merry Christmas. This is Adam Blagg, pastor of Otterbein United Methodist. I hope this finds you well and enjoying the 12 days of Christmas. I hope that you have had the opportunity at some point to take time to look at a nativity scene. Most of us have some scene of some type at our home. There's a couple displayed around the church almost every year. And if you've ever happened to go to Linda Conrad's house, you have seen a wide variety of nativity scenes from all over the world with a variety and multitude of interpretations of what that scene looked like. Our house doesn't have nearly as many, but we have a few different types of nativity scenes. Someone gave me a beautiful scene created out of olive wood from Israel, intricately designed and detailed. We have a set from our children's past with little stuffed figures of the nativity scene. We have a magnetic set that sticks to the refrigerator doors, and there's probably a couple other around the house too. They're a beautiful representation of what happened on that Christmas night long ago. But if we actually took a close look at that nativity scene, it doesn't fit very well with the scripture. We have mashed up multiple texts to come up with this one scene. My reading of the Christmas text this year had no donkey, but you'll almost always find a donkey in a nativity scene. The camel is implied. I don't think we have camels in the biblical text for the wise men, but yet we'll have a camel there. We have shepherds, which were, of course, in Luke's telling of the story, but did they bring sheep with them? Find me a nativity set that does not have a baby lamb or a sheep in there. Of course, Mary and Joseph are there, and the wise men standing there, all regally dressed, bearing gifts in the baby Jesus. But nowhere in our scripture text do we find all of these things happening simultaneously. It can make our head hurt to think about the logical dissonance that we find in a nativity scene. But we should not waste too much time being critical of this nativity scenes that we find in different ways. We miss the point if we think too hard about what all of that means. Sometimes it's okay for us just to enjoy the beauty of Christmas and not get too wrapped up in all the technical details. I know, I say this, and yet I constantly during the season of Advent go through that Christmas text with our Bible study participants and make them think about it in new ways. But sometimes it's okay just to set aside the differences and allow everything to be mashed up together. For that helps us remember the real reason we come together on the Christmas season. For in all of these sets we have a simple location, a manger, a stable. Christ is born in humble conditions. Shepherds arrive to worship the King, people who are not the favorites of everybody. The low-class people of their day, probably young, probably unwashed, coming from the hills immediately for that birth, strangers walking in to a stable to worship a king. We have wise men who would not have been Jewish, who would not have seen Christ as their Messiah in the ways that most people in Israel would have, but yet coming to proclaim the beauty of Christ's birth for universal, for all people. You have this lowly child, born in humble settings, being worshipped by all different types of people, and a miracle birth, born of the Virgin Mary, coming from a land distant to be born in a strange place, this Christ child for whom we celebrate this Christmas season. So don't get too tied up with your manger scene not matching the exact text. Sometimes it's okay to look at the simplicity of who Christ was. And we see that in our manger scenes. We see that in the nativity settings. We see the humility in one who does not look like a king, but is surely the King of all kings. So Merry Christmas, and I hope as you look, or maybe as you begin to put away your nativity scene, you remember the simplicity of it and how it reminds us of the beauty and power of this season and all that it means for us as we move into the new year. Merry Christmas. Happy New Year.